was going to talk about the importance of sentences, and I decided that sentences were too big, so I'm just going to talk about the importance of words, a little bit more manageable. Not words in the sense that Robbie was talking about words, but more, more of an abstract sense of words. And I also am not at all an expert in the subject, but I started collecting words when I was in the first grade because I had spelling bee ambitions and I started reading the dictionary. I liked long words, including anti-disestablishmentarianism and confusing words like bizarre and bizarre, and words like kindling and quince and mellifluous that sounded good. And when people have asked me why I like words, I can't really say. I just do the way that some people like numbered and paint. But a friend asked me recently why everyone should have to study English. What is the point of studying literature and of learning to write anyway? Shouldn't it be reserved for people who like it and want to pursue it, like myself? It caught me off guard because I'd always taken it for granted and I didn't answer fully then, so I decided to talk about it now. Or rather, read about it now because I don't think I'm going to fool anyone into believing that this is an extemporaneous speech. I do believe that it is important for us to study literature and try our hand at it because it teaches us to use words effectively. Words can create worlds of experience that allow us to examine our lives differently. We are often very careless with our words, especially in conversation. We point to something and say, that thing over there, or I have a bunch of stuff to do. We use adjectives like good, bad, happy, sad, interesting. When we tell someone a house is kind of small, can they imagine it? When we say we're feeling sad, can someone know our sadness? And it becomes important in our writing because we can no longer fall back on gesture and tone to try and express ourselves clearly and find the right words. This is important even if you don't particularly care about your writing because there's always texting and Facebook and emails and tweets and whatnot. And I think it's important to recognize that when all we have are words, each word has to matter. So take the last 3 lines of James Wright's poem, A Blessing. Suddenly I realized that if I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom. Alternately, he might have written, suddenly I realized that if I walked out of myself, I would bloom. There are hundreds of such possibilities. The technical meaning doesn't change or changes only slightly, and yet there is a dramatic shift. The word stepped implies a single light and deliberate placement of the foot, one simple motion that is not walking per se. He says, my body and not myself, because he's attempting to create a distinction between the two. He did not write bloom or blossom, but break into blossom. The word break is evocative here. It surprises us with its strong sound and its connotation because we break arms and break china plates. It adds something harsher and a little more painful, even the blossoming that follows. I don't know if Wright considered any of these alternatives, but I imagine that like any writer, he was deliberate. He made choices about words. He might have played with blossom and bloom and decided that for some inexplicable reason, blossom sounded fuller and more complete. He might not have. At any rate, he chose words that evoke a certain image and that could only be evoked with a specific pattern of words. Think about that when you're describing a house in an English paper. Did the floorboards really creak, or was it more of a low groan? Are you really sad, or is it more that you have a strange taste in your mouth that reminds you of a dark gray room? So when you choose the right words to form an image of some kind, what are images exactly, and why are they important? Let's go to Berkeley, California in the summer of 1956. I haven't been there, probably neither have you. Joan Didion, then an English major, was taking a summer course on Milton because she had neglected somehow to do so and would not graduate without the credit. Here is what she wrote about that summer in her essay, Why I Write. For reasons which now sound heroic, I needed a degree by the end of the summer, and the English department finally agreed if I could come down from Sacramento every Friday and talk about the cosmology of Paradise Lost, that they would certify me as proficient in Milton. I did this. Some Fridays I took the Greyhound bus other Fridays, I caught the Southern Pacific city of San Francisco on the last leg of its transcontinental trip. I can no longer tell you whether Milton put the sun or the earth at the center of his universe in Paradise Lost, the central question of at least one century, and a topic about which I wrote 10,000 words that summer. But I can still recall the exact rancidity of the butter in the city of San Francisco's dining car, and the way the tinted windows on the Greyhound bus cast oil refineries around Cortinas Straits in a grayed and obscurely sinister light. In short, my attention was always on the periphery, on what I could see and taste and touch, on the butter and the Greyhound bus. Didion is talking about what we would call imagery around the breakfast table. She's talking about her relationship with the physical world, a relationship that we all have and attempt to communicate. That's what sticks with her even as the intricacies of Milton fade. And she's communicating these images to us, and 56 years later, we are reading them and finding that pictures form in our minds. But wait, she forgot what she was reading. And if she doesn't remember Paradise Lost, why would any of us? Doesn't that prove the point that what we learned in English is useless? No. Because it is through reading and writing that we learn to communicate images effectively. We learn how to choose words that will create an image. Long after you forget much of what you read in English class, you'll hopefully remember how to pull together words to form an image. What was it that you read Lower Spring? You can't remember, though you can remember the harsh bright light of the classroom, A format, the taste of coffee on your breath, the dull ticking of a clock, your heavy eyelids. You might not sit down 25 years from now and write down what that English classroom was like, but you might. And you might come back on your reunion weekend 50 years from now and tell someone exactly what that classroom used to smell like. You learned how to construct that image somewhere, probably in that English classroom or another one, though you don't remember learning it. Maybe as you thumbed through a copy of The Things They Carried, which you read that spring, or sat down to write that 13th personal narrative. I read Why I Write last summer on a break from reading submissions of the Paris Review in sticky, hot July, sitting on a leather couch across from a pretty college student in wire-rimmed glasses and a patterned vintage skirt who I thought that I would impress with my reading of Joan Didion. I don't remember a lot of the hundreds of submissions I read that summer, but I do remember the sun-stained leather couch I sat on and the strange taxidermy birds that were hanging from the ceilings, and the taste of cherry juice from the fresh cherries that I ate every day, and the fingerprints that I left on the armchair or the couch. Can you see it? And some of the things I read have stuck. I remember the Joan Didion, and I remember a description in one story I read of the smell of a dead deer, and one about a stripper named Sasha in Moldova who had gray eyes and a lisp, and one about a broken rocking chair on the porch of an abandoned house that was sinking into its foundation. I remember also a story that my dad told me when I was 5 about sailing into a missile testing ground in Gardner's Bay in the thickness of the fog. Why? Because somehow the combination of words evoked an image that stuck. I was drawn into a universe that was not my own, and that is the power of truly great writing. So what? So I was pulled into a different universe, one outside of my experience. What is the point of that besides entertainment? I recently read a speech by Joe Kerner, an English teacher retiring after 36 years at Roxbury Latin, and he expressed this far more eloquently than I could ever hope to. He wrote, "Serious literature stretches our life's boundaries, expands our life's possibilities, allows us to live lives vicariously that we can never experience ourselves firsthand. Historical lives, foreign lives, fantastical lives, noble lives, criminal lives, mean and sneaking lives, as Thoreau once said. Serious writers create worlds so real that our feet scrape along their cobblestones, streets, and jungle paths. Create human characters so real that we walk in their shoes as they grope their way through existence, trying to figure out how to live and what to live for." Just what Thoreau hoped to discover when he moved out of Concord Village in 1845 and took up residence in a 10 by 15 cabin on the wooded shore of Walden Pond. Literature, in short, provides us with an infinite number of lenses through which to view life, and examine our own lives. Kerner makes a good point. Literature allows us to look at ourselves from different vantage points. There is no comparable method of stepping outside of ourselves than through reading, through entering a universe entirely constructed of images, constructed of words. Studying literature allows us to re-examine the world we live in because it provides us with a perspective that we do not possess. And it also teaches us how to provide others with our perspectives, because only through reading can we really learn to write, how to pick words that will show what we want to show. And only through thinking about words in this way can we really communicate it all, even verbally. Through reading and writing, we can learn to be conscious of our choices, whether on paper or out loud, and we can learn to say more than "I am sad." So my questions for the person who asks what I've learned to read and write: how else can you enter into someone else's universe and re-examine your own? How else can you share your universe and perspective with someone else? How else can you learn to find the right words? James Wright said, "Suddenly I realized that if I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom." The only way I know to step out of your body is through the worlds created by other words. Learn how to do this. Learn how to create your world for other people. Collect words that you can use. And perhaps then you will break into blossom, or at least begin to understand what that